You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Hristodoulou.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Hristodoulou and today I am talking the Kansas City Chiefs and how I would like to see them go about free agency this offseason. So my Chiefs fans, make sure you comment down below. Let me know. What do you want to see from this Kansas City Chiefs team? How would you like to see them go after maybe picking up a player or two? Not a ton of money in the cap space, but, you know, a little bit of money to play with, and I expect to see some money get moved around to open things up a little bit more for them. They're sitting at $526K over the cap, so again, not a ton of money, but money to play with and expect to see a little bit more. There are some big signings looming for them, whether it's put off another year with the franchise tag or potentially letting some guys walk. I think this is going to be a really interesting season to see how the Kansas City Chiefs really kind of like retool and reload to get back to chasing after another Super Bowl this year. But let me know what you think, what you want to see from them in the comment section down below. For me, I'm starting with the first thing that I would like to see them do, and that is talking about letting go of a player. And this player I have in mind, wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. Let me start this off by saying this. I do not think he disappointed. I think he panned out about how I expected him to, at least for me personally. Near 1,000 yards, he had 3 touchdowns on the season, 78 catches, maybe not quite as many touchdowns as you wanted to see from him, but you could also say that that just gets chalked up to the focus that they had in terms of dishing the football out to as many people as possible. Travis Kelce eating up a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. So it could just be the scheme and kind of how things played out and as to why Juju doesn't have as many touchdowns as you may have wanted to see from him. But ultimately, I think he did his role. He did his role, and he fit into his role, I guess you should say, and he fit into his role really well. A guy that you can trust. He has experience. This is a guy that I've never really thought was as bad as some people were trying to make him out to be towards like the tail end of the Pittsburgh Steelers run he had, and I think that Juju Smith-Schuster is a really good wide receiver that can be great when put in the right situation. But with the way Kansas City clearly went about their offense this year, he's not going to be that like 13, 14, 1,500 yard guy putting up 10 plus touchdowns. It just doesn't seem realistic with the way Kansas City does things. But with all that being said, he definitely did his job well, and I think it's well enough that he kind of priced himself out of coming back to Kansas City. Unless he's willing to take some sort of significant discount from the Chiefs to keep playing with Patrick Mahomes, if he really cares about cementing himself as a legit guy in the NFL, Spotrac has him calculated at roughly earning about $14.6 million per year on whatever contract he signs in free agency here. If it's not a hometown discount for the Chiefs this year, and I just don't really think the Chiefs are going to be willing to put up that kind of money, especially with the way it seems that they're kind of operating with the wide receiver room now. It feels like they're going after high upside, good value guys, players that are maybe somewhat established or have a proven track record of being good, and hoping that Patrick Mahomes can at least bring them to their high-end ceiling or maybe even elevate them a little bit beyond that because of how good of a quarterback he is. So with the way I kind of see things in Kansas City shaping out this offseason, I just don't really think that the Chiefs have the money or the willingness to bring back Juju Smith-Schuster at nearly $15 million per. So if it's anything, it's like 10, 11, 12, and I would be saying closer to $10 million a year, and Juju has to be willing to take a discount because he wants to play with Patrick Mahomes and maybe try to win another Super Bowl or two, depending on how long this Kansas City dynasty runs. So that's kind of how I look at letting a play, like that's who I expect to kind of see them let go. It just doesn't really make sense to me with how much money they have right now, which isn't a ton, and just, guys that they have to play. Orlando Brown Jr.'s contract is looming, and they've got to figure out what they're doing there and just trying to pay some other guys on the defensive side of the ball. I just don't really see near $15 million a year working out for them. Now, I just mentioned Orlando Brown Jr., and he is the topic of my re-signing side of things. This is a guy that they traded a decent amount of draft capital to get from the Ravens, and it just feels like they're like skating on thin ice with him. I'll start off by saying this about Brown Jr. He's been a really good left tackle for them and has done his job really well. This is a guy that they went to go get after the Chiefs got demolished in the Super Bowl by that Tampa Bay defense when their offensive line fell apart at the end of the season. And he has done a really good job at what the Chiefs have needed him to do. Now, it was noted last offseason, he wanted to be the highest paid left tackle in the NFL. We're talking like $23 million per year or so, give or take somewhere around that, at least at that time. The number is getting a little bit higher now going into this offseason. I don't necessarily know, based off of just like consistency, if he's really worth being the highest paid left tackle in the year in the NFL on a per year basis. With a career high 6 penalties this past season, plus a 7th that was in the Super Bowl, top 5 being around like 3 or 4, maybe. But if you're looking at going into this offseason, that number is probably going to climb to like maybe 24, close to 25 million. Left tackle contracts are getting really expensive because teams want to pay that guy to protect the blind side of their big money quarterbacks. You're spending a lot on the QB. You're going to want to spend a lot of money on the bodyguard on the blind side. It feels like Brown and the Chiefs right now are kind of heading into like that free franchise tag round number 2. That just kind of seems like the route it's going. If they opt to franchise tag Brown again, they're going to be paying him $20 million a year, solid flat rate. So it doesn't put him at the very top of the list, but he's still going to be an expensive guy to have on the team. I feel like the Chiefs just gave up way too much to not be bringing him back at this point, and you've got to want to get more than just 2 years out of him. You want at least 4 or 5 years to feel like you got your picks worth for the trade that you made with the Ravens to bring him in. So it wouldn't make sense to me to see them let him walk this offseason. The franchise tag seems very realistic, but in my scenario here, I want to see them try to figure something out. Again, I know Brown wanted to see that $23 million a year mark. He wanted to be the highest paid left tackle in the NFL. I just don't really think that's realistic. He's gotten a Super Bowl now, so I don't know if, maybe that makes it harder for the Chiefs to bring him back at a rate more towards what they want, because you can't dangle, though. We're trying to win a Super Bowl with you here in front of him, take a little less money. Now he's gotten his Super Bowl ring. So I do think that makes things a little bit harder. This is a sticky situation. You're paying a really expensive quarterback a lot of money. You also have some other guys you're trying to pay out money to. I'm going to assume that if they get close to making him near the top, like if he's within the top 3, maybe he'd settle for something like that. The way Spotrac has him listed in terms of average annual, you're looking at roughly $22.4 million a year if he's signing a deal this season rather than just getting the franchise tag slapped onto him again. That might be doable for the Chiefs. That ranks him at 3rd in the NFL in terms of what left tackles are making right now. So that's just below that $23 million mark he wanted. But is he willing to accept that? I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But in my personal opinion, you gave up a lot for Brown Jr., and I understand, slapping the franchise tag on last year and maybe doing it again this year is a good Band-Aid thing to do for the next couple of seasons, or for these last 2 couple of seasons, because it kind of just kicks the can down the road, so to speak. But you've got to get something long-term with Orlando Brown Jr. You can't let him walk after this next season if you slap the franchise tag on him again and can't figure something out. You need to get, like I said, that 4 or 5 years out of him, so that way you can feel good about giving up the trade capital you did to get him from Baltimore in the first place. Now, let's talk about who I would like to see the Chiefs pick up. As I've already mentioned a few times, not necessarily the most money to go around with the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, some restructuring can go on. You can kick some money down the road and have to pay the players later, so you can open things up in the cap space. With Juju walking for that $14 million a year, $15 million a year contract that we talked about earlier when I was talking about letting Juju walk in free agency, and Mecole Hardman's also being projected by Spotrac to rake in about roughly $10 million a year per season. I don't really know if the Chiefs believe Mecole Hardman's worth $10 million a year. Like, yeah, he's got the Jets, but I don't think they think he's worth that much money. And with the way things kind of happened last offseason, Christian Kirk got that massive deal, which I honestly think was well worth the money based off the production they got from him this year. Just at the time, people were worried about it. It feels like Mecole Hardman could be in that area of like people are going to assume he's overpaid, and he might end up actually being overpaid. I don't know if you can really one-to-one compare Mecole Hardman to Christian Kirk, but it feels like he's going to be that surprise guy that maybe gets more money, or at least gets more than some people are expecting. I think if you're letting Juju walk, and let's just assume in this scenario that Mecole Hardman's walking as well, I wouldn't mind seeing the Chiefs go after. And again, this goes back to the whole, you're getting good value wide receivers that have a proven track record of being pretty good in good situations when things are going well for them, but they're not necessarily like elite or top end guys, like big name type of guys. How about wide receiver Darius Slayton from the Giants? Hear me out for a second here if you're wondering why I'm throwing out this name. I'll start off by saying I have not forgotten that 2019 season that he had. His rookie year, 740 yards, 48 catches, 8 touchdowns, bursted on the scene. Deep threat, guy was wowing a lot of people. I thought, based off his rookie year, that this was a guy that was going to be like a legit top-end wide receiver for the Giants. He just exploded on the scene. Nobody really expected it from him. I think he's a really good player. He's got the Jets to really open things up. So, you lose Mecole Hardman, the speed guy. You're bringing another guy like Darius Slayton. I think he's got the Jets to kind of do that similar role as well. He's also had 700 yards in 3 of his 4 seasons in the NFL. And the Giants passing game has not really been anything to really sit there and go, an impressive all-around, elite group or elite passing game. I mean, it's been one of those things where it's like, it's been inconsistent, and the fact that he's pulling 700 yards in 3 of the last 4 seasons speaks for a lot, considering some of the drama around the offense that we've seen from the Giants the last few years. His average depth of target, 13.3 yards. Again, he's that deep threat guy, a guy who can find his way open towards like the middle to deep end of the field when he's playing through the defense there. He's also only projected by Spotrac to make roughly $3.5 million per year with whatever deal he signs in free agency. Think about that. 3 out of 4 seasons, 700 plus yards, and he didn't have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football. He's got the Jets. He's a pretty solid route runner. He's very good at finding the open space and coverage. This is a guy that reminds me of like them bringing in Juju for that 1-year prove-it deal. Them going after Marquez Valdes-Scantling on a pretty solid deal as well. A guy with a really solid and proven track record. Not quite the household name, but somebody that brings value and really good production that I think if you pair him with Patrick Mahomes and the way this offense works in Kansas City now, post-Tyreek Hill era, this is a really good signing and something I could really see being a big success for the Chiefs. So maybe I'm blowing it out of proportion a little bit, but that just feels like a match made in heaven, if you ask me. But my Kansas City Chiefs fans, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. That is my free agency look at how I would like to see the Kansas City Chiefs attack it. What do you want to see from them? Comment down below and let me know. Appreciate you watching. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.